Welcome and thank you for joining my short presentation on how I transformed my application deployment with Serena Deployment Automation. My application architecture consisted of a Java Spring web application with a MySQL database on the back end using JDBC. And my application consisted of 3 Tomcat environments that I had to deploy to: development, QA and production. My before state, before I automated the process, consisted of a commit to the source code repository. Jenkins would then build my source code, then pack it into a WAR file. I would then have to take the WAR file, then actually uncompress it, then edit the JDBC properties and match my environment that I want to deploy to. Then I would have to move the WAR file into the web apps for Tomcat and then restart Tomcat. Then I would have to rinse and repeat this process for the remaining environments. As you can see, it involved multiple steps and manual interaction with the deployment process. To give you an example, some of the manual steps involved in a deployment process. First, we would have to copy the WAR file to a temporary location, then unzip it. Here we want to edit the JDBC properties, and this string here must match the environment that we want to deploy to. Development. Once it's saved away, we then have to repack the WAR file and then deploy. Once we have the new WAR file, we have to move this to our Tomcat environment and then restart Tomcat and repeat this process for each of the machines in our environment. As you can see, this is actually a very manual intensive process and prone to errors. With Serena Deployment Automation, I have simplified my deployment process. To deploy my new changes, I commit my code to the source code repository, then Jenkins will then build my code, and then I will then deploy my code by simply pushing a button to deploy it to my development environment. The remaining environments I can then promote those changes to my QA and then my production environment. Now in Serena Deployment Automation, I will now show you how I automated the entire deployment process. In my development environment, I'm going to deploy the latest version of my application. The first step is that it will update the SQL files, download the artifacts, and then update SQL. That's successful. It will now then install the WAR file on the Tomcat server. As you can see, it's cleaning up temporary storage, download the artifacts, replace the tokens for the JDBC properties, check Tomcat is alive, stop the application, undeploy the application, unzip the WAR file, then move the correct JDBC properties into the web application. It would then start the application. Do a final cleanup. And we are successful. Now if we go back to our application, we can then promote this change straight into QA. To check if my deployment has been successful, I'm going to go to my development Tomcat. Here I can see my application. Then I can go to my QA environment. And also I can see that my application has been successfully deployed and promoted to my QA environment. That concludes my presentation, and thank you for joining.